Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports, and in today's video I am concluding the 2022 NBA draft process, specifically the mock draft season, with my final full first round rendition of the 2022 NBA first round. It's been a long process. Most of you have stuck here with me throughout the entire journey, so I want to issue a huge thank you to you guys, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. It has meant a lot, the growth that we've had on the channel, the amount of comments, likes, all of that. It's been so awesome. We've hit 13,000 subscribers. I would have never imagined we'd get to that number when I started this channel. And honestly, it's just surreal. So that's a huge testament to you guys, a huge thank you again from the bottom of my heart to you. And to celebrate, in this mock draft, we're going to actually mock a few trades as well, something I typically don't do, but this is my final one coming out a couple days ahead of the actual NBA draft. So again, to celebrate, we're going to put some trades in this video. So hopefully you're excited for that. Go give us a follow on Twitter. I have a fun idea for a video on there where I'm going to ask for your guys' mock drafts and some maybe trade ideas, that kind of stuff. I would love for you to go DM me on Twitter. Our Twitter link is in the description, and for only the second time ever, I'm going to actually put my own personal Instagram link in the description. This is only the second time I've ever done it, over a year and a half. So in order for you guys to actually get to go follow me, the link's in there. I am a private account, but I will be accepting all follower requests within the next 48 hours from when this video goes out. So if you want to follow me, there's some clips of me playing basketball, and there's some stuff in there that, I'm going to be going to Las Vegas too for NBA Summer League. So hopefully there'll be some posts there on my actual personal Instagram. So if you want to see any of that kind of content, go ahead and give me a follow on IG. And now let's jump into the actual mock. We're starting off the last one here, and nothing changes at the top here. I've got Orlando sticking at #1 overall. And first overall, I've really been conflicted, right? I've been talking about Chet. I've been talking about Jabari. Do they go crazy? Do they make a move? I think they've settled on a decision, and I'm going to continue to mock it here. It's going to be Jabari Smith out of Auburn, first overall. I think he's the selection. I want to know your guys' opinion on this. I want to know your thoughts. So let me know in the comment section if you think it's Chet. Comment Chet Holmgren to Orlando. But otherwise, I'm going to assume that you're going with Jabari to Orlando as well. I just feel like that's the safe selection for Orlando to take, Jabari Smith. He's got some of the skills that every team in the league would want. He's a phenomenal shooter. He's a great perimeter defender who can stay on his feet, plays with pretty good balance, and offers elite length. Worst case scenario, he's one of the best role players probably ever, right? Because he's got the three-point shooting. He's got the defense. You're looking at a 3-and-D wing with elite length, elite size, and someone who is a good athlete. This is a very safe and secure selection for Orlando, which I think when you look at this team, they have Suggs, they have Franz Wagner, they've got Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, Wendell Carter. Introducing a player like Jabari Smith does really help this team, and who knows, maybe they're back near the top again next year. They can add another top-end talent next to Jabari Smith and Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs, and then you have something really special moving forward. Moving into pick 2, we've got Oklahoma City here, and no, I do not have Oklahoma City looking to make a trade out of this spot. So second overall, who are they going to go with? There's been a lot of Jaden Ivey rumors. Chet Holmgren, he's been tied to Oklahoma City quite a bit. And maybe Paolo Banchero. There's definitely some options here for what OKC could look at. And in this one, I've got them going with Chet Holmgren, second overall. My last mock did not have Chet going to. And I wanted to talk about some of the rumors with Jaden Ivey, but I think ultimately my final rendition here that's actually in video format, I will be posting one on the community post tab and also on Twitter. I'll be doing that one by pen and paper and just uploading an image of that on Twitter. But for my actual final video, Chet Holmgren, second overall to Oklahoma City, feels almost like a lock to me. Sam Presti gets a unicorn type player, which really fits not only his draft history, but also what Oklahoma City needs right now in terms of a forward who can fit next to Shea and Josh Giddey, and someone who can do a lot of nice things. He's a nice connector piece offensively. He's going to help a team win way more than anyone's projecting. I know a lot of people are looking at his frame and have concerns. This kid wins. He won multiple state championships at the high school level. He was really impactful in Gonzaga getting as far as they did this year. There was very little drop off from where they were with Jalen Suggs the year before, and that's hard to do because that team almost didn't lose a game. They got all the way up to the end without losing, and then of course they lost at the very end there for Gonzaga. But this year, they were really, really dominant again. Not quite as good, obviously, but they were pretty darn good again. So even with the loss of Corey Kispert, that team definitely played really well this year, and Holmgren was right in the center of all of it. Pick 3, Houston Rockets here now at this spot, and it's been pretty consistent last month and a half or so. It's not changed in my mock draft, and of course some reports are coming out kind of confirming what I've been thinking this entire time. 3rd overall, Paolo Banchero to the Houston Rockets. Now, is it a done deal? Maybe not, but it's basically done in my eyes. If Paolo Banchero is here 3rd overall, I feel like the Houston Rockets are going to take him. It's not a coincidence that after the day he worked out for them, they went and traded their starting power forward in Christian Wood. Those two things were not incidental or coincidental. That was intentional by Rafael Stone. He showed his hand early, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? They're picking top 3 in a class with 3 really good forwards. There's nothing wrong with showing your hand. You're not really at risk of a team moving up in front of you, because ultimately, say they land Chet Holmgren or say Jabari Smith somehow falls to 3, I think they'd be happy with that outcome as well. And they still got decent value on return for Christian Wood in their eyes. So I feel like they feel pretty good, even if Banchero is not available for them. But assuming he is, they're going to run this pick up to the podium. They've got an intriguing trio now of scoring with Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, who I still really, really believe in, and Paolo Banchero ultimately could be the best player in this class when it's all said and done. He would be my pick for Rookie of the Year. He's got a great offensive game. He's a pro-ready scorer. Put the ball on the deck, handle it quite a bit for someone who's 6'10". He's a pretty decent interior defender. Now, I think perimeter-wise, he's got to offer better balance. He's got to close out a little bit better onto the perimeter, specifically against guys who can dribble the basketball and get to the rim. He showed some issues with that for sure. But his offensive game, there's nothing to not love about what this kid could be. In Houston, you're going to have at least 2 dynamic main guys to go to between Green and Banchero. The future is looking up in Houston. Now, pick 4, we've got a trade to announce. This is where Adam Silver walks in and says, hey, there's been a trade. Pick number 4, Sacramento is trading the draft selection of number 4, the draft rights to number 4, to Indiana. And the Pacers are in return giving Sacramento pick number 6, pick number 31 in this draft, and also Cleveland's 2023 first rounder, which is why this is a perfect move for both sides. Sacramento gets to add in a future first to add into their young core, and Cleveland, there's no guarantee they're a playoff team next year, even though I would think that they maybe are. The East is really tough, so there's no guarantee. That could be another lottery selection there going back to Sacramento. Pick 31 in a really deep class is valuable, and you're only moving down 2 spots to pick up all that extra assets. And the reason why Sacramento is willing to do this here, Jaden Ivey, the player they probably would have selected, has publicly come out and basically stated he doesn't want to play for Sacramento. He didn't exactly say those words, but when you're the 4th overall projected player in the class by most, and you're saying that the teams picking 5 and 6 would be your preferred landing spots, it does come across that way. And I think the Kings, if they're reading into that, probably see the writing on the wall there that Ivy does not want to go to Sacramento. And for my own selfish reasons, I'm hoping he doesn't as well. But this is a pretty good outcome for both. Indiana jumps ahead of Detroit here, 4th overall. And it's no surprise who they're going to be going with. The 4th overall selection now in control by the Indiana Pacers. And they're going to make the move for Jaden Ivey, the Purdue kid staying in Indiana. The stories are so good, right? He wants to be in Indiana. He's publicly talked about how awesome it would be to play for Indiana and for the Pacers. And I think when you look at the combination of Tyrese Halliburton and Jaden Ivey, it's an intriguing, great young backcourt that could really take over the league in a few years. I really do believe that, just because of how well I think Jaden Ivey is going to fit into the NBA. And the thing I like about these two, they complement each other extremely well. Tyrese Halliburton, someone who maybe a little bit more methodical, a little more cerebral, reads the floor quite a bit. Bigger point guard with some good size. He can be impactful defensively with his length. He's an all-around player who can also shoot the ball from deep. He's got great range to him. And he doesn't really like to put as much pressure on the rim or move or shoot off the dribble as much as a guy like Jaden Ivey's capable of, which is where Jaden Ivey fills in all of the flaws around Tyrese Halliburton, because Ivey's going to be one of the most athletic players in the entire league. He's going to be one of the fastest players in the league. He's going to be one of the quickest players in the league. He's a solid ball handler who, once you put the ball in his hands, you tell everyone else, get out of the way. This kid's going to go rip the rim off the backboard. And I firmly believe that. But even when he's not exploding to the rim and dunking on somebody, he's capable of doing a lot of other nice things. He's got phenomenal footwork. He's very polished with his up and under. And with his athleticism, he can get to any spot on the floor at any moment he wants to, which really makes defense a difficult thing to play against him, because the moment you get a switch or you have to hedge it all, he's going to blow by a big, or he's going to split the double and go. He's got all of the little things you're looking for in a lead guard that I think Haliburton, who played phenomenally for Rick Carlisle, by the way, I think the two of them together become the future of Indiana basketball. This is such a good selection for the Pacers and a really great move. And I think the Kings don't even really lose out here, even though I'm super high on Jaden Ivey. I think other players fit in Sacramento a little bit cleaner than Ivey does, even though I'm really high on Ivey. By the way, if this happens on draft night, I am deeming the Indiana Pacers the biggest winner of the draft. No questions asked. Pick number 5, the Detroit Pistons here now. And for me with Detroit, they're bummed, right? They wanted Jaden Ivey. Pistons fans, I'm not trying to manifest any bad juju on you guys. I would love for you to get Jaden Ivey. I think Detroit's probably the best landing spot for Ivey, because I think, all the reasons I talked about Haliburton and Ivey being great together, Cade Cunningham's just a better player than Tyrese Haliburton. He will be long-term. He's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and I think a little just better at everything, honestly. So I think Cade and Ivey would be the best combination you could really dream of in this draft. But here, 5th overall, Ivey's off the board. Who do you go with here? And you go with another highly athletic player in Shaedon Sharpe, and I think this really works well. I know there's been a lot of Benedict Mathurin rumors to Detroit. I would not hate that at all. I think Mathurin would fit really well in Detroit. I considered mocking that here, but I decided to land on Sharpe because it seems like he's a lock to go in the top 7 now. And I would be kind of surprised if he's still even available at pick 7, simply because you're looking at a player who posted a 49-inch vertical, which is incredibly rare. He has dominated all of his individual workouts and team workouts. It sounds like his pro day was phenomenal. And there's a lot of reports too that at Kentucky, GM, scouts, executives were going to Kentucky practices to watch this kid play against the Oscar Tshiebwes and the Ty Washingtons of the world. And supposedly, reportedly, I was not there at those practices, but reportedly, Shaedon Sharpe was clearly the best player there at those practices in scrimmages. Of course, that's not the highest level of competitiveness or competition. Kentucky's really good, but it's not a real game. It's just a scrimmage. But if Shaedon Sharpe was shining there, he definitely opened the eyes of executives and scouts. I see 5th overall, Detroit, a really good landing spot. You put a highly athletic player next to Cade Cunningham, you're going to have some success. Moving on to pick 6. And remember, we got Sacramento here now after that blockbuster trade where Jaden Ivey goes to Indiana. But this is why it's such a good fit, right? Sacramento, with concerns about Ivey maybe not wanting to be there, maybe that scratches him off their board anyway. So who would have been the next guy on their board? Probably Keegan Murray out of Iowa, which is who I mock here 6th overall. So instead of just outright taking him at 4, if you do scratch Ivey off your board because of concerns he doesn't want to be in Sac, well, then you end up with an extra 1st-round pick and pick 31 in this draft, simply for still getting the guy you wanted to take anyway. Oh, and by the way, his rookie contract will be a little bit cheaper because you took him 2 slots later. Not that that's the biggest deal in the world, but it does give you a little bit more flexibility when talking about the luxury tax and stuff like that, because Sacramento clearly is not going to have the stomach for that. They're already over the salary cap as well. So saving any money you can is valuable, especially when you can still get the same player you would have taken at 4 anyway with Keegan Murray out of Iowa. He's a player a lot of other GMs and executives love, and I understand why. When you look at him, he's going to help a team win. Sacramento needs to find a forward really badly. They need to find someone who fits next to Sabonis and Fox, and that's what Keegan Murray really does. He's a valuable, talented player who can shoot behind the 3-point line. He's actually surprisingly better above the free throw line in terms of the college game from the 3-point line. So I expect him to shoot decently well from above the break. But again, the corner 3-point shot is just shorter at the NBA level. So he'll probably succeed there as well. He hits the offensive glass well. He's opportunistic as a scorer, which is what I think Sacramento needs. Looking at Sabonis and Fox, those two are going to have the ball in their hands more often than any other player on that team. So you need to find guys who can fit off of that. Keegan Murray does that. Oh, and by the way, he's a good defender. I think he's going to be a sneaky good help defender, even though he's not going to get a ton of blocks a game. He's going to be positionally smart and in the right spot. And for Mike Brown, their new head coach, I think he's going to need a player like Keegan Murray to tie up all the loose ends. And Murray to Sacramento feels like a really good fit and a great outcome for Monty McNair, who's actually done a great job drafting in the last couple of years since he got that Kings GM job. Moving on to pick 7, we have another trade. Portland. Definitely bummed to see Shaedon Sharpe and Keegan Murray both off the board. We actually have a video on what I think Portland could do with pick number 7 in the NBA draft up on the channel, recorded yesterday. Make sure to go check it out after this one. But here we have the deal. Portland trades pick number 7 to Oklahoma City along with Eric Bledsoe's contract. And in return, Portland receives pick number 12. So they move down 5 spots. But in addition, they get Lou Dort and Kenrich Williams, 2 rotation forwards. Lou Dort, you can maybe classify as a guard. He's kind of like a 2 or 3 in today's NBA. And Kenrich Williams probably plays mostly the 3 in today's league, which is good for Portland here. You look at, keeping Anthony Simons in free agency. You obviously got Dame there. You look at adding in Lou Dort, Kenrich Williams to a core that already has Nasir Little. They've already got Josh Hart and Yusuf Nurkic, and you still have pick 12 to add to that. You could have a serious, decent 8-man rotation with Dame as your headliner. That's a pretty good place to start, and it only costs you Bledsoe's contract and moving down 5 spots in the draft. It feels like a pretty good outcome, especially since their top 2 options would probably be Shaedon Sharpe and Keegan Murray, who are already off the board. This is a really ideal situation for both sides because Oklahoma City gets to jump up, and we know how bad their center position is needed. And for me here, you look at targeting a guy like Jalen Duren, who is a top 5 player in the class in my eyes, someone who down the road could become one of the better players from this class holistically when you consider how switchable he is defensively. He's physically dominant. He had a 2020 game this year at the collegiate level, which never, ever, ever happens. And he's someone who, with his strength, look at how big his arms are here in this picture. Usually I don't try and, gush over a player or something. Look at him. He's huge. He's a big player. Pause. But he's someone who's going to be very impactful at the NBA level for a long time. I really do believe in that. He's someone who I think Oklahoma City here, you add him in. And the nice thing with going with Chet Holmgren at 2 and also Jalen Duren at 7, those 2 players complement each other. You can play Chet as the 4, play Duren as the 5. You've got a great combination of strength and passing and shooting now with Holmgren. The front court's full. And by the way, Duren and Holmgren probably aren't going to help this team a ton in year 1. They might still be bad next year, especially if they decide to do what they do every year and shut down their good players the last 30 games of the season. They still might be in the running for Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson or Dariq Whitehead or any of the other 2023 NBA draft prospects next year near the top, which, by the way, we're going to be covering that in a mock draft video the day after the NBA draft this year. So next year's draft coverage is going to be a whole calendar year long. I'm really excited for that. Moving into pick 8 now, and we have the New Orleans Pelicans here at this spot. And New Orleans, a team that with Jalen Duren off the board, there's a few things to consider. Last week I mocked AJ Griffin. I don't know if I see it going the same way this time around, even though I love AJ Griffin's fit there when you look at all the potential wings that they could throw out on the floor. Kind of like a version of what Toronto's got with all the length, size, athleticism, shooting. New Orleans could really employ something like that as well. But here in this mock, I see them going with Benedict Mathurin simply because he hasn't fallen to number 8 very frequently, because usually Duren is available at 8, not Mathurin. And I think Mathurin's a great pickup here for New Orleans, another player who can thrive with the ball in his hands, but has shown flashes of being a really nice cutter when he's active in the offense. Now, I think that there's going to be some need for him to remain active, and coaching's going to have to say, hey, we need you to cut off the ball, we need you to be active without the ball in your hands, because at times he does get a little lackluster in that area. But he's a player who, when you watch him, the biggest thing that jumps out to me is the fluidity of his hips. He can change direction better than any other player in this class. Arguably, maybe Jaden Ivey would like to have a word with him about that. And that's not something you usually hear talking about basketball players. Usually that's talking about football running backs, right? Fluidity of their hips, or maybe you're talking about a cornerback. The reason why I think it matters in basketball This guy's going to be able to get downhill when he wants to. And defensively, he's going to be really good on ball because you're going to try and beat him. You're going to hit him with a crossover, but he's going to flip his hips and stay in front of you and at least maintain contact, which if you have a shot blocker behind him, they're going to love playing with Mathurin because he's going to force players into tougher shots simply because he moves his hips well and puts himself in a position to at least stay in the play. And there's a lot of value there for New Orleans. Look at Zion Williamson's athleticism, Brandon Ingram's length. Jonas Valanciunas is a pretty decent center for them. Not something to super write home about, but ultimately he's a solid player. And I think Mathurin kind of ties in a lot of this together for New Orleans. And the upside's here, right? He's a good player who's going to help this team win right now, but down the road, his athleticism, his scoring ability off the dribble gives you maybe a high-level asset if you want to trade him. Otherwise, you can hold on to him, let him develop, and when some of your other players get a little bit more expensive, you'll have Mathurin on maybe year 2, 3, 4 of his rookie deal where he's still relatively cheap. Pick number 9, San Antonio here now. And with Jalen Duren off the board, that's been one of my favorite selections to mock. It's a little dicey here now for what I want to do with Sacramento. I know the need for a backup center is real, but I'm not just going to reach on a player because I feel like they need that position. That's not in San Antonio's MO. That's not what their front office does. They draft talented players, and in recent years, they've had a real bias towards shooting, whether that's through free agency or some of their draft selections. And they're getting one of the better shooters in this year's class here, 9th overall in AJ Griffin out of Duke. He shot about 50% from 3 this past year on catch and shoot scenarios. Yes, you heard that right. 50% from 3 on catch and shoot opportunities. He's got one of the better escape dribbles in the entire class, if not the best. He's a pro-ready shooter, and there's a lot of upside here for him in terms of his athletic profile. He's had to deal with some injuries. He's missed some time, and I think as he started to come back for Duke and really started to cement himself, I mean, he had a huge game against Wake Forest. That was really his coming out party this past season. If he continues to play at the level he was toward the end of the year and continues to stay healthy, his athleticism is going to lend itself to higher upside and probably better defensive output, which he struggled a little bit this past year at Duke. And I think a big part of it was his balance, but he's someone who I think is going to be a quick learner. His dad's a coach in the NBA right now. He's an assistant with the Raptors. And, you know, he's been in the running for some head coach jobs. So he comes from a lot of good pedigree. His dad also played in the NBA. He's got smart people around him, and I think he's going to be a really great pickup for whichever team gets him. In my final rendition here, I have San Antonio selecting him 9th overall. So now into pick 10, and we've got the Washington Wizards here now at this spot. And I'm excited for Washington. You know, Bradley Beal, there's some rumors that maybe he's on his way out. And if you're Washington and you're a Washington fan, you say, okay, fine. I mean, if we get a sign and trade for him, maybe we'll get some really great stuff back. And ultimately, we got Kristaps Porzingis, we've got Kuzma, Hachimura, Avdia, Kispert. We've got a collection of good young talent and a lot of scoring output. We've got some nice pieces already. Daniel Gafford, I haven't even mentioned yet. Washington's a pretty good team that has a decent amount of pieces. And if Beal stays, I think this team could do some winning right now. But if he goes, I mean, hitting the reset button, maybe trading off all these assets wouldn't be bad either. 10th overall, though, let's assume Beal stays. We're going to go with Dyson Daniels here. I know Washington's in the market for point guards. There's a lot of rumors about DeJounte Murray, maybe a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Ultimately, I don't know if they'd make a move for any of those players. But 10th, Dyson Daniels kind of fits what they're looking for. A bigger point guard. In fact, he's bigger than Shai and DeJounte Murray, which it seems like Washington has a type that they're looking for. They're around that 6'5" to 6'6" height. Well, Daniels is 6'8", and he's probably a better defensive player than most of their other targets. Now, DeJounte Murray is probably a better defensive player than Dyson Daniels, at least at this point. But Dyson's got some really high upside defensively, and offensively doesn't need to have the ball in his hands a ton to be effective. Kind of reminds me of Lonzo Ball in that regard, where he's going to be a connector offensively, and maybe not as ball dominant of a point guard as we see other point guards in the league, which I think is good for Washington. They've already got players who want to have the ball in their hands in Kuzma and Beal and Kristaps. You don't need to feed this guy the rock a ton. And when you do want to give him the rock, he can work out of the post, which I think would be intriguing, getting Kristaps on some backside cutting action. You get Beal running off of some dribble handoff type things. It gives Washington's offense a variety of different looks, and he's going to be the playmaker and floor general for this team. He's going to get everything going. He's going to run the sets, and I think it kind of clears up some roles there in Washington, a much needed element to what this Wizards team currently has going on. Pick 11, New York Knicks here now. And for the Knicks here, 11th overall, there's a few different things that I would really like to highlight for this team. There's a lot of talent. They've got some nice players on decent deals. Look at a guy like Alec Burks. And 11th overall, they have an option to draft Johnny Davis here. And I think that kind of fills what they're looking for. A player in the backcourt who can really score the rock. Emmanuel Quickley, Johnny Davis, Obi Toppin, Julius Randle, and then your center, whoever it is, whether it's Nerlens Noel next season or you find one down the road. That's a pretty good young core. And then there's some players in there I haven't even mentioned yet, like Quentin Grimes. Jericho Sims played pretty well on a two-way deal this past year. It's funny, I actually played against him in high school. That was my final high school game, was against Jericho Sims. We went to overtime and lost. A little bit of a bummer there, but losing to a guy who made it to the NBA, not the worst thing on my track record, that's for sure. But ultimately, Johnny Davis here getting an opportunity to play for New York just makes sense, right? He's a competitive kid. I think Thibodeau is going to love him. He's locked in defensively. He's got shot creation potential. People have likened him in the past to Devin Booker. I don't quite see that level of ascension for him, but I see the play style similarities, right? He's able to put the ball on the deck, score the ball. And the one thing is his shot mechanics are a little irregular and sometimes inconsistent, which I think has lended itself to some issues shooting the three ball. But, you know, with the right shooting coach, NBA training, he can probably sort out some of those issues and some of the kinks in his game, and he could be a nice steal even. Pick 11. Pick 12 now, we've got the Portland Trailblazers here after the deal with Oklahoma City. And this is what I'm talking about, right? They only had to wait a few selections. They still get to take a guy here in the lottery, and they basically added in Lou Dort and Kenrich Williams for free. And from there, you're going to add in Jeremy Sohan, and it's all about the front court, right? When I went through the players that they have, kind of felt like the power forward spot was lacking. Well, it's not anymore. Taking Jeremy Sohan, he's a great defensive player, and this is really the identity time for Portland. If they want to win big, they need to get better defensively. Lou Dort helps, Kenrich Williams helps, Jeremy Sohan really, really helps. This is a smart defensive player who can guard all across the floor. He's someone who can be solid out on the perimeter. Now, I don't know if he has the lateral foot speed to actually match up consistently with point guards and shooting guards, but I think he's got the IQ and length where if he gets switched on to those players, he can survive out in space. And that's a huge plus. You look at Yusuf Nurkic right now, I don't think he survives out in space very well. I don't think there's a lot of players in the league that survive out in space as big men. That's just quite the reality. There's not a lot of bigs who are decent out there. I think Sohan can be decent, and I think he can be good as an interior defender and someone who matches up with threes and fours a little bit more frequently. He gives you versatility, flexibility, length. And by the way, when he gets the ball, he can push in transition. I think for Portland, if you develop a good transition offense where you push down the floor, get some open looks for both Simons, Dame, that way maybe you get some of your other players like Josh Hart involved through transition buckets. Nasir Little, get him some lobs out in transition. It opens up the whole floor for the rest of the team. And I think Sohan, his pace pushing and his ability to defend is going to really help this squad. Now at pick 13, we've got the Charlotte Hornets here. And for me with Charlotte, it's going to be more defense, right? We talked about it with Portland. They need to get better defensively. Charlotte falls in the same boat for me. Otherwise, they're risking kind of playing out like Portland did, but the Eastern Conference version, where they've got a really great guard in LaMelo Ball. Not that he's going to be Damian Lillard good, but he's good, right? LaMelo's awesome. I love watching LaMelo play. Hornets have a lot of talent on this team, but they need to get stops, especially when it matters. And last two playing games that they've been in, we've seen them not be able to do so. They got destroyed by Indiana, and then this past year, it got destroyed by Atlanta. And at this spot, they need to find ways to improve defensively. And why not go with someone who's 7'2" with a 9'9" standing reach? I know I've been saying those numbers in every mock draft since the NBA draft combine. That's because that's how insane those numbers are. He is 7'2". That is huge. And by the way, he's not immobile, can actually survive out in space, probably less frequently than Jeremy Sohan, I would say. But, you know, he can hedge out there. He's not completely useless as a hedge defender, but he's going to be really good in drop coverage. He's highly athletic. He's a great lob partner with LaMelo Ball. The Hornets have a lot of players on this team. I thought about some trade options here. It's possible we see them move. I didn't have anything mocked up that I super love for this squad, so I decided to stick here at 13, take Mark Williams, and feel really good about the selection at the end of the day. Moving on now to pick 14, and here at this spot we have the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I've kind of gone back and forth here. Do the Cavs look for youth? Do they go with the young guy here and roll over into next season and say, Sexton's probably going to be back. We're going to probably hold on to him, whether we have to match an offer sheet or just outright sign him ourselves. We have Karis LeVert. We've got Darius Garland. We've got Evan Mobley, who's young. We've got Jared Allen. Our whole core is generally young. Do we need to try and push for right now? Or do we try and maybe wait it out a couple of years, let our players continue to develop, and then make a push from there? I ultimately decided in this final mock rendition to go with the player that helps more right now, and that's Ochai Agbaji coming from Kansas. And the reason why, Kobe Altman's already kind of shown his hand a little bit to this with the Karis LeVert trade. He sent out a first-round pick and the Rockets second rounder, so essentially 2 firsts almost, in a deal for Karis LeVert. I thought that was astronomical pricing. I thought LeVert was not worth that much. I thought Indiana did a really great job in that deal. But Cleveland, their young core is so good that it's not that big of a risk for them. It really isn't. Especially since there was a protection on it. That pick goes out to next year now. They still have their lottery pick here in Ochai Agbaji. They want to win. They want to make a push. And honestly, I didn't want to say this in the video, but I'm deciding to do it right now anyway. The LeBron James factor is real to a certain extent. Cleveland wants to win games. They want to make the postseason. They would love to win a postseason series without LeBron on their roster. They really want that. I think it would be huge for this team. They have not won a playoff series without LeBron since before I was born. That is a serious thing. That's a serious statistic. That's just flat out something that they want to change. They want that narrative gone, that they need LeBron. They don't want that, especially not anymore. And LeBron, I'm sure that the front office there still likes him. I'm sure they got a pretty good relationship with him, all this, all that. They want to win without him. And Ochai Agbaji gives you a better chance to do that this season than any other players that they have available to them on the board right now. He fills a huge need on the wing, and Agbaji to Cleveland feels like a done deal to me as of right now. Pick 15, Charlotte here now at this spot. And for the Hornets selecting 15th overall after going with Mark Williams at 13, it's clear to me that they're going to be looking for upside. And this is where Mitch Kupchak, who's a phenomenal drafter, does such a great job. Took James Bouknight last year, sat him for a year, didn't really get to see too much of him. Also took Kai Jones last year. His track record when it comes to the NBA draft is phenomenal, both when he was back in LA and in his tenure at Charlotte. He has done a great job, and this is going to get added to the list of good decisions. Jaden Hardy, for me, I've never backed up on the idea of him being selected in the teens. I have not mocked him any lower than 19 in any of my mock drafts. And on draft night, when he gets drafted in the top 19 picks, I'm going to say, see, I told you, because I've been looking at it the entire year and I have not switched up on it. The talent's there, and GMs and executives see it the same way. I'm telling you right now, somebody is going to take him in the top 19, regardless of what his efficiency looked like. And it was a 12-game sample size. And this is an example here of Charlotte. They'll probably play him in the Greensboro Swarm for an entire year. We might not see any of him next year in Charlotte, actually. We'll probably see him for 15, 20 games, whatever. But we're not going to see substantial Jaden Hardy minutes right away. We will see substantial Mark Williams minutes right away. And this is the nice thing here for them. They don't need both of these picks to hit in year one to make a legit jump. They've got youth. They've got a lot of talent. And Mark Williams is going to be the hit for them. They're going to make it to the postseason next year. I'm pretty confident on that. We'll see if they ever get that head coaching situation figured out after Atkinson backed out on them. But here, Hardy, long-term upside, long-term potential, it screams a player like Donovan Mitchell. Now, will he ever get to that level? Probably not. But when you watch him, it's really hard to not look at the similarities between those two and say, wow, this kid could be pretty darn good at the NBA level. Pick 16, we got the Atlanta Hawks here now. And at this spot, their GM, Thomas Schlenk, he's going to be looking to make a big improvement to this team, specifically when it comes to adding in a little bit more playmaking on the team and a little bit more defensive presence. And Ousmane Dieng helps you in both elements. He's a 6'10" playmaker who can play as a small forward probably early in his NBA career, but might work as a backup ball handler. He might be the guy who handles the ball second or third most on the team by year two of his career. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all, because you look at him, he's able to beat guys off the dribble, get to his spots, kick out to shooters, and I think gives them another playmaker when Trae Young's out of the game, which is really important for this Atlanta team. They simply just did not have the same offensive flow when Trae Young was off the floor, and you understand why, right? Trae's one of the best offensive players in the league, but you need to find ways to at least mitigate him being off the floor and be a little bit more competitive in those minutes. They're going to be better defensively the moment Trae Young steps out of the game. That's an obvious, but you need to stay competitive offensively. That's where Ousmane Dieng helps you quite a bit. And I think you could play next to Trae Young and be a pretty solid fit next to him as well, because he is bigger, like I talked about. Houston Rockets 17th overall here now. And Houston, who has 3 first-round picks in this draft, already grabbing Paolo Banchero at 3. At 17 now, they have a pretty good opportunity here to find a guy like Tari Eason out of LSU. This team needs to get better defensively, and I'm not worried about them super long-term defensively. When you look out, say 5-6 years from now, Jalen Green will have improved as a defender. Alperen Şengün will have improved as a defender. This whole team will get better with age, because remember, they were playing about 4 19-year-olds. Usman Garuba, we didn't get to see a ton of him. He'll help them defensively. But Tari Eason is just another big, physical, dominant body who can bang down low. He's going to offer some size off the bench. And I think there's value to that for Houston. They've already got a lot of athleticism and scoring output. You need guys who can work on the other end of the floor. And that's where Tari Eason starts to check a lot of those boxes for you. Pick 17 now, we've got the Chicago Bulls, or pick 18, excuse me. We got the Chicago Bulls here now. And at this spot for Chicago, they need to find more players who can just help them win games in the short term. And that's EJ Liddell here out of Ohio State. I like this kid's game a lot, and I really like his fit into Chicago, because you look at Nikola Vucevic, what does he really lack? Well, he's not the greatest defender. He doesn't protect the rim super well. So why don't we get this highly athletic power forward who can shoot the 3 ball, doesn't really complicate our offense, but is a smart defender who can defend out in space, but really does a great job as a weak side rim protector. And that's where you're going to get the value. They need to get better defensively, specifically with their forward play off the bench. And, this is a huge improvement going from Derrick Jones Jr. to EJ Liddell. You're cleaning up about 20 minutes a night where you're playing basketball to pretty good basketball. EJ Liddell is going to be highly impactful. I would not be shocked if he makes an all-rookie team. Now, I'm not saying I'm betting on that either, but I wouldn't be shocked, right? And that's really the thing you're looking at here. How impactful can this kid be for you right away? And it's going to be very. And that's the goal for Chicago. They want to win. They want to win right now. They're going to try and keep Zach LaVine. And this team is going to be back next season and highly competitive. Pick 19, we got the Minnesota Timberwolves here now. And for the T-Wolves, with Tim Connelly as their new president, it's about drafting well, finding players who fit next to Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. There's a lot of rumors right now speculating in Minnesota about D'Angelo Russell. I actually talked with some of my friends off camera about that, who are Minnesota fans, and they really, really expect D'Angelo Russell to get traded. I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comments section. But here at 19, I have them going with another Ohio State player, Malachi Branham here, who's a freshman. He's a couple years younger than EJ Liddell, and I see it possible he goes behind Liddell on draft night because he'll have less of an impact right away. But the thing that you have to like about Branham here is he's strong. He can play physically. He can play with his back to the basket a bit. He reminds me of a younger Wesley Matthews, who was a really nice shooter for Portland, played a good brand of physical defense as a perimeter guard, and also someone who is comfortable posting up. We got to see a little bit more of that in his tenure in Dallas after signing a big contract with the Mavericks back in, I think, 2014, 2015-ish. We could see Branham kind of play a similar role to what Wesley Matthews has been in his career, and that's a really nice pickup at 19. 19, sometimes you get varied results. Not every single player in the top 20 is going to hit, but 19, I think Branham, safe, solid. Now, there's not as much high-end athleticism and upside as you would maybe expect for a player who shot, near 40% from 3 as a freshman. You would say, wow, this kid's going to be so good. I think he's going to be good. I just don't know if he's going to be so good, right? Because there's going to be limitations. He doesn't have a quick first step. He's somewhat limited as a ball handler. But when he catches the ball and shoots it, when he defends, he's going to help impact winning. That's why he goes 19th in this mock. Pick 20, San Antonio here now. And the Spurs at this spot got some options. After going with AJ Griffin at 9, they could go really in any direction here. They could look for a backup guard. I still think that they could look for a big man here. or maybe even just another wing, and just add more wings to their plethora of talent. It gives them a little bit of flexibility in trade discussion because they have a lot of players who, hey, maybe we want to move this guy. We have some other guys in the fold waiting. And at 20 here for San Antonio, I have them going with Jalen Williams because we're going to go based on who is one of the better players left on the board. Out of Santa Clara, he's been one of the biggest risers throughout the draft process, specifically toward the back end of it here. After, the draft combine really helped him cement himself as a first-round pick. And 20th overall feels about right for me with San Antonio. I know some people are looking at him as a lottery selection. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland maybe looked at him at 14, but I think that's a little rich for Jalen Williams. I think right around this 20 spots, kind of right in the right realm for where his actual true talent is and where it falls in San Antonio. The goal here is adding another guy who can handle the ball a bit, play make out of the pick and roll, specifically for when DeJounte Murray's no longer on the floor. It gives you another player that you can rely on who I think is ready to impact winning. San Antonio made it to the play-in tournament. They have 3 first-round picks. The goal should be playoffs next year for them. Now, that's a very ambitious goal. The Clippers are going to be tough. Pelicans are going to be tough. Lakers maybe get their act together. I wouldn't bet on it, but maybe. It's a tough Western Conference to get into the postseason. Right now, the NBA is so extremely talented. There's about 25 teams, 24 teams that probably think that they're playoff caliber. And I can't blame them. Now, remember, only 16 actually make it. So is San Antonio in the 8 teams that miss, but should be in? Or are they in the 16 that actually make it? I don't know, but Jalen Williams at least helps you get closer. 21, Denver Nuggets here now at this spot. And in past videos, I've talked about the brain drain, but this team, I still think that they're in a position to do really well in this draft, specifically with the talent they already have on the roster and finding players who fit around it. An example of a player who fits around it is Dalen Terry out of Arizona. I really like this kid. I think he was flying under the radar. I tried keeping him to myself a little bit. I had him in a couple sleepers videos, and I was super excited about him. But last couple weeks, I've been hearing a little bit more rumblings about him as a first-round pick, and I think Denver's not going to play around with the risk of losing him between picks 21 and 30. They're going to take him here at 21, make sure they get the guy that fits next to Jamal Murray. He's going to replace Will Barton in the lineup down the road, and he offers some really good length at 6'7". He's improved immensely as a player. He's still relatively young, and I think he's going to help Denver not only right now, but also long-term. I think he can fit next to Nishan Highland as well. I like Denver's draft history, specifically last year with Bones Highland grabbing him where they did. They did a great job with that selection. If they can walk away with Dalen Terry here, they're in a really great spot, and I feel really, really good about their long-term future. 22, Memphis Grizzlies here now. And Grizzlies fans, I feel like you guys just assume people are disrespecting you. This team's very good, but there's some serious issues right now when it comes to what players are going to lose in free agency, specifically Kyle Anderson and also Tyus Jones. Now, it's possible they keep one of those two guys. I'd be surprised if they keep both, just given the complexity of the salary cap when John Morant's going to need an extension. It's going to get a little tight on Memphis's budget, because of the luxury tax, where they're going to be capped out. Now, maybe a new TV deal helps them out with that a little bit. We'll have to monitor the salary jump down the road. But here at 22, it's about trying to find a replacement to Tyus Jones, and they go with Ty Washington. So they go from Tyus to Ty. And this has been one of my favorite things to mock. I'm going to continue to mock it here because if he's available, it just makes too much sense. Zach Kleiman's a smart GM. Ty Washington's a fundamentally sound backup point guard who can run the pick and roll, keep the offense alive when John Morant's out of the game, and can also really, I think, help this team in other areas as well in terms of his mid-range scoring. I think that'll be a valuable addition to Memphis. And I think he's a competitive player who's smart and can read the floor. And those are things that you're not going to get out of every player. That's just the honest truth. Not every single player can read the NBA floor at the NBA speed. And not every player is as competitive as a guy like Ty Washington, who had a 17-point, 17-assist game this year, one of maybe the more underrated college games ever. That was a great showing. And honestly, that game basically locked him up in the first round, I thought. When I watched that game, I was taken aback with his ability to make reads in the pick and roll. He was able to hit short rolls to Oscar Tshiebwe, had a lot of nice pocket passes, thread the needle on a couple of them, worked the ball down low in post entries, did a lot of nice things. And I think Memphis here getting a good player that can help supplement those minutes they're losing from Tyus Jones' probable departure from Memphis. 23, Philadelphia 76ers here now. And the Sixers, I thought about them trading this pick out, but maybe the most recent selection of a guy like Tyrese Maxey motivates them to say, hey, let's stick here in the back into the first round and see if we can find another gem in the 20s. And I think they've maybe got one here in Nikola Jovic. He's a very skilled shooter of the basketball who can work off the bounce a little bit. Now, the issue is defensively, he's somewhat brutal, and this doesn't solve all of Philadelphia's issues. I understand that, but most often, a pick number 23 overall is not going to solve all your team issues. They still need a backup big. Let's see if they go back and target Drummond again in free agency. That's what I would have to guess. But let's say they go with Nikola Jovic. You add a serious three-point shooter who's got very nice touch on his perimeter shots, next to James Harden, who I'm sure they're going to keep, next to Tyrese Maxey, who knifes through literally every single defense in the league, and you put that around Joel Embiid, who's one of the best post-up players to ever play the game, you feel pretty good about what you've got, right? You've got someone who, at the 4 position, I think is a big upgrade. We'll see if Tobias Harris gets traded. That's a possibility. But here, Philadelphia, 23rd overall, if they keep the pick and don't attach it to a Tobias Harris deal, Jovic could be a nice pickup for this team. 24, Milwaukee here now. And this is an example of what happens every single year, because every single year, some collection of teams don't take a guy because they don't feel like his potential is super high, and they let a very good player fall to an already very good team. And that's an example here with Walker Kessler from Auburn going to Milwaukee. The only concern I have really about Milwaukee right now, assuming Chris Middleton's healthy and Giannis is healthy, is their backup center position. What do they do when Brook Lopez is out of the game? Bobby Portis is about to get expensive. I still think that they could use another big in that rotation. I like to have 4 bigs. If you include Giannis, Portis, Lopez, Serge Ibaka is not the 4th guy. He just isn't. But Walker Kessler will be. This guy averaged 4.5 blocks a game this past year for Auburn. He's going to be highly impactful around the rim. He fits perfectly into Milwaukee's defensive scheme, which is, hey, we're going to give up almost no shots at the rim, and we're going to make teams beat us shooting the 3 ball. And we're going to contest really well out there. And he's got the same amount of mobility as Brook Lopez does right now. So you're not even really losing anything. The one thing you're going to lose here is, some of that shooting. But Kessler has shot the ball a little bit. Now, he hasn't shot a high volume. He hasn't shot super well. But the hope here is maybe by year 2 or 3 of his career, he starts to shoot the ball fairly well. And if he does, this is a home run hit. This is a huge steal for Milwaukee. And this would really help extend this team's window past Brook Lopez and his time there in Milwaukee. 25, San Antonio on the board again. This is their 3rd pick of the first round. I did look for some trade options here for San Antonio, but I didn't land on anything I loved. I thought about 20 and 25 for 14 to Cleveland, but I opted against it. I decided to keep it here with San Antonio having 25 because I really like the player they're about to take in Gabriel Procida. He's an Italian-born player who's going to be highly impactful at the NBA level. He's a great athlete, jumps out of the gym. He's got a nice 3-point shot. He's got some touch on it. He shoots the ball relatively high, which is a good thing because you have enough arc there. The ball's going to sit pretty off the rim, and he's going to have shots bounce in that others just simply don't. He's one of the more fun players to watch in this class because he's, I'm going to say it, he's a white guy who's great in transition. You typically don't see that as much at the NBA level as, you'd maybe think you could. And Gabriel Procida here, he's going to be somebody who is a lot of fun to watch. He's a really great athlete. He caught a ton of lobs this past year for Fortitudo in his league games, and I think he's a player who's flying under the radar a little bit. This is the first time in my mock draft in the first round. Talked about him last mock in my second round edition. If he doesn't go in the first round to San Antonio, probably doesn't go in the first round, but I think a lot of Spurs fans are hoping to see him develop under Manu Ginobili, and I think that would be a lot of fun, honestly. 26, Houston here now on the board, and the Rockets with their 3rd first-round selection. They go ahead and take Marjan Beauchamp here out of G League Ignite. This kid is someone I've struggled finding a real consistent landing spot for in the first round. He's an instinctual cutter, although I don't think he's the smartest kid in the class in terms of his actual IQ on the floor, but he's instinctual. He feels when to cut. He doesn't necessarily know the right situation, doesn't need to tell you the right situation. He just does it. And that's a great thing to add in Houston when you already have players like KPJ and Jalen Green, and we already have them getting Paulo Banchero. You want players who function off of the rock. And for me, this is what this kid does. Beauchamp's going to be highly impactful in that regard. He's a smart defensive player who's able to move his feet well. He's got the requisite body type you're looking for a defensive wing. And Houston, they get better with this selection. This is an example here of them hitting on 3 first-round picks. Could they look to move 17 and 26 up? Possibly. But even if they don't, this is a pretty good outcome for them. They're going to be very young again. They're not going to be very good again, but they're young, talented, and this team, the outlook long-term is that this team is going to become something really special down the road. Pick 27, Miami Heat here now. And at this spot, I have the Miami Heat going with Ismail Kamagate from Paris, France. He's a very intriguing big man when you consider the fact that he had some 8, 9, 10, maybe even a couple 11 block games. Yes, block, not points, not rebounds, blocks. He had that many blocks in games this past year in Miami. I think the one thing they're lacking here, you look at this team, certain players stepped up big. You look at Martin, who stepped up huge this year. Oladipo towards the playoffs had some nice minutes. They're missing a backup center who's going to be reliable. Now, I know there's a lot of hope about Omer Yurtseven. I think there could be as well, but I would still like to have another option just in case. If he was ready, Spoelstra would have played him. I believe in that. Spoelstra is one of the better head coaches in the league. And I think that if Yurtseven was ready for minutes over Dwayne Dedmon in the postseason, he would have given them to him. But he didn't. So I think you take a shot here on another center. Having a couple centers that are options for you is not a bad thing. Kamagate a little bit more athletic than Yurtseven, not quite as big, but I think positionally a little bit smarter defensively. Yurtseven's better offensively than Kamagate. So you have options here behind Bam. If you want to go with an offensive big, or if you want to go defense here with Kamagate, I feel really good about this outcome though for Miami. Pick 28, the now reigning NBA champions. Huge amount of credit to the Golden State Warriors. Really great outcome for them this season, obviously winning the championship, really setting themselves up as a dynasty. That's the term I don't use lightly. They are a dynasty. They've won 4 championships over the last 8 years. They've been involved in so many NBA finals. This team is elite from top to bottom. They've got a ton of talent. Their system works really well for who they are. I don't think any other players would really fit in that system super well in terms of like an actual team. I think that the Warriors have done a great job identifying players that fit, putting them in the system and running that system. And to continue that, to keep that going, go with Kendall Brown here out of Baylor, a player who earlier in the process I thought could be a lottery level selection, but kind of toward the end of the year didn't really take the steps forward like I was projecting him to or expecting him to. And Golden State's one of the few teams that has shown capability of thriving offensively with non-shooters on the floor. They tend to run 2 or 3 non-shooters pretty much at all times, and their offense remains amazing because when you do have those 2 or 3 non-shooters on the floor, they're usually accompanied by either a Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, guys who can put the ball in the hole. And Kendall Brown probably replaces Andre Iguodala long-term. And I mean, the body types are similar. I don't think he's going to be as smart of a player as Andre Iguodala. I don't think he's going to be as impactful as an Andre Iguodala was for Golden State, especially toward the back end of his prime there, right when he got there from Denver. But ultimately, he's an impactful player here, Kendall Brown is, who's very good in transition, and I think is willing to play in a role that he's not going to look to score, but he's going to look to play make, screen for other guys, get everybody else open. He's going to help in that regard. He probably doesn't play a lot in year one because Golden State, typically they're not going to play a ton of their young guys. Kuminga got some run this year because he was ready for it. He's a top 10 pick, right? Kendall Brown, 28th. I don't think he's going to get a lot of run. He will play quite a bit with the Santa Cruz Warriors. And I think he's going to get better. And I think down the road could impact this team in a really good way. 29, Memphis again now on the board after going with Ty Washington at pick 22. 29th, I have them selecting Trevor Keels. And this one kind of comes into correlation with replacing Kyle Anderson, but not completely. I think the long term here is you look at the writing on the wall, and Grizzlies fans are going to love this, but when Ja Morant's due for that extension, it's going to cost you some players on your roster. So they're going to have to come through the crossroads of, do we want to sacrifice Dillon Brooks, or do we want to sacrifice, some other players on this roster? And I think ultimately they're going to sacrifice Dillon Brooks, which is why you get the Dillon Brooks replacement right now when he's available in Trevor Keels. He's big, physical, strong. I know a lot of people love the comparison to Dillon Brooks. I'm not saying this kid's going to be Dillon Brooks, but I could see him playing in that similar role. He's an aggressive player who can get to the rim, can knock down open three-point shots, and is a good lateral defender who can stay in front of other players 1 through 3. And there's a lot of value to that in Memphis, especially when you have John Moran on your roster. You want to have good physical defenders around him. They have that in the post with Brandon Clark and Jaren Jackson. I think Keels fits this roster well. I think he can help this team. And ultimately for me, Memphis finds another player to keep their long-term window open while they have to go through some tough decisions on who's not going to be on the roster long-term, because the salary cap and the luxury tax are going to be deterrents for Memphis. And then number 30, the final pick of the first round. Nuggets fans, thanks for sticking around this entire time to get to this selection. And after going with the other player at 21 that they took, I'm having them go with Hugo Bassan here, who I really like. I love this kid. I mocked him in the first round the entire time. I think he's a first round level player. If he doesn't go in the first, he's going to go in the very high end of the second round. But I'd be pretty confident in seeing him go in round 1, especially to a team like Denver, who's looking for a little bit more playmaking pizzazz. They're looking for a little bit more shooting. Bassan offers those things. He's a high volume scorer who can handle the ball, kind of functions as a combo guard to a certain extent. And I think if you add this in with Dalen Terry, who they took at 21, this team's going to be pretty good. I think Nikola Jokic is a special talent. You want to put as much offensive firepower around him as possible. And Denver's been a team that's been able to work around some negative defenders. Hugo Bassan, I think it's a really easy fix for him defensively. I think that the way that he plays defense, specifically with his shuffling, when he tries to slide and stay in front of a guy, he does not have a center of balance to him, and his head bobs up and down, and his footwork is rather lazy. Those are things that are easy to clean up and fix and actually coach on. Now it's going to be down to Mike Malone and the Nuggets coaching staff to identify those things. I feel like they are obvious when you watch him on film and slow down some of his defensive tape, but they have to see it, which is why I'm a little concerned that, hey, maybe my big board looks wrong, because if he doesn't play very good defensively and a coach decides, oh, well, we don't really want to invest that much time into developing this kid or giving him play time, he's not going to figure it out, then maybe I'm just wrong about where I fall on my big board with him. But here, 30th overall, I think Denver, if they figure out some of the defensive kinks and coach this kid up, he could be a really impactful player at the NBA level, which is a steal, 30th overall. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy today's video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel. Comment, the NBA draft is here. If you made it to this part of the video, we are just a couple days away from the NBA draft the day I'm recording this. And important note, we've got live streams coming up. There's going to be a live stream probably on the channel the day that this video was posted. There's going to be a live stream the day of the draft, the entire day. I will literally be live for probably like 12 hours that day. If not 12 hours, probably 8 hours. I will be live for a long time on the day of the NBA draft. I am so excited for it. I hope you guys are as well. Make sure to leave a like again. If you are, go ahead, follow us on Twitter. Go follow my personal Instagram. Again, link will be in the description for that. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.